Hey, what is up everyone? So with the release of Season 13 a couple weeks ago, one of the things that I've been very interested to find out is how does this new skeleton camps compare to the previous on-demand events that we had in the game, like the Siren Treasuries and the Sea Forts. So what we're going to do in this video is a big gold comparison between the Siren Treasuries, Sea Forts, and skeleton camps to figure out which ones give the best gold value, the best emissary grade, and have the best amount of time to complete. And then I'll give my thoughts on each of these on-demand events and some tips and tricks with them and other stuff that you should be aware of when you're thinking about which one of these to go for. But before we get started with it, I will just say all three of these are great events, so I definitely recommend trying all of them, kind of mix them up. But this video is really just to see how they all compare to each other. So for this experiment, we're going to be doing guild emissaries. These emissaries are really kind of the new standard for Sea of Thieves, I think, because they stopped doing the emissary ledger rewards for the other trading companies. So really the guild emissaries are, I think, where people are going to be going to in the future, so that's why I chose it for this one. I have noticed in the past that sometimes there's a difference in the emissary grade value that each earns, so it might be a little bit lower with the guild emissaries, but that shouldn't affect the results of this since we're going to be doing the guild emissary for all three. The other thing we're doing for this is we're going to do a raid voyage for all three of these. Now all of these events you can do on demand, so you can just sail over to them and just start it, and they have different rewards depending on if you do that. But I think during the raid voyage makes it a little bit more fair and a little bit easier to compare it so that we are seeing accurate results in comparison of these different events. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm going to start off by getting our first emissary flag, and then we're going to go ahead to a Siren Treasury. Now for this experiment, I'm going to be doing an Athena raid voyage for all three of these. Mainly because I just want to get that leveled up more, and I think that will be an interesting one to go for. The reward value might be different depending on the trading company you do, keep that in mind, but again, it shouldn't affect the results of this experiment either. So one of the things that I found with the raid voyage specifically for the Siren Treasuries is that just doing the raid voyage and spawning in here already gets my grade up to almost grade 1. So it had a pretty big boost just to start off, and we should expect a bigger increase once we complete the Siren Treasury as well as get the treasure picked up and put on our ship. So let's go ahead and dive down and see what we got. So with the Siren Treasuries, they're really unique because you'll fight enemies that you don't really see at a lot of the other different events or voyages in the Sea of Thieves world, like the Sirens, the Ocean Crawlers, even some like skeletons that are the coral version. So it's pretty unique, and I think one of the things that makes this really fun is just the abundance of tridents that are down here. If you want to do this event quickly, you should definitely utilize the tridents that are in here. There's tons of them, and if you want, you can actually take them with you back to your ship. So if you wanted to collect all of these, you can put them in the mermaid statue before you leave, and then you'll be able to collect them all. I have another video that basically covers everything you'd want to know about the Siren Treasuries and like how to best fight them and everything, so I'll leave that linked if you want to check that out. Now something else to keep in mind with the Siren Treasuries is their location. There's 3 of them on the map. 2 of them are in the corners of the map, so they're relatively safe. If you have an emissary flag up and stuff, you probably won't have anyone attack you there. It's not impossible, of course. Anywhere in Sea of Thieves is unsafe if you're in the regular mode. But the one place I wouldn't recommend doing, unless you're, okay with the higher risk but no real benefit, because you don't get a boost in reward for doing it, is the Siren Treasury that's near Plunder Valley and pretty close to Reaper's Hideout. That one is pretty central in the map, and you're just likely to have people attack you there. So that would be one I definitely would not recommend going to. And there we go. We've now completed the Sunken Treasury, and the vault will open. We can start getting our loot. So for this test, I'm not going to include the gold piles that we get just because they vary so much between each time you do them, as well as that they all have a pretty even amount of gold piles, I would say. I would expect anywhere between like a 750 to 2,000 gold just from the gold piles at each of these places. And with places like the Sea Forts and the skeleton camps, there's additional gold piles that you can find across the area, so it kind of varies a lot and depends how long you want to spend. I don't think it's really worth it to get all of them, but it's up to you if you really are strapped and want some extra gold. For this comparison, all we're going to do is just track the gold amount for the actual treasure that's sold at the end with the emissary bonus. Now let's go ahead and collect the treasure and see how much grade we get for putting this on the ship. So as you can see, it sadly does not get us to grade 3, even though it's super close to it. If you're doing this, you could probably try to find some other little piece of treasure to stack on top of this, but obviously with the raid voyages, it's a little bit more difficult because obviously it's a lot harder to just go and grab Athena treasure emergently, and you have to sell your treasure before you can do another raid voyage. So keep that in mind. The other trading companies might get you more emissary grade like I mentioned earlier in the video, but with Athena's fortune, I'd say we got like 2.9% of grade there. Alright, now let's see how much reward we get for this. So for the Siren Treasuries, we ended up with it taking 10 minutes to complete, earning 31,907 gold, and resulting in a 2.9 emissary grade. So pretty good around the board. I wonder how the sea forts and skeleton camps will hold up to that. So we're going to go ahead and lower this emissary flag and put up a new one, and go ahead and go to the sea fort. So one of the things that people may not know about these sea forts is that there's actually 2 different forts in here. There's the main one that opens when you finish the entire thing, and then there's one at the top of the fort. And the key for it is found in one of the compartments that are all over the place in the sea fort. So if you find that key, it will get you a little bit extra treasure in here. Not too much, it used to be a lot more, but something to keep in mind, we're going to be factoring that in for our total at the end of this experiment. So the sea forts were pretty quick. It only took me 4 minutes to complete this, from the time I got off my ship to the time I defeated the boss, and we got a pretty nice little haul here. So the sea forts were a little bit disappointing in the results. While having a similar emissary grade to the Siren Treasuries having slightly more but not enough to get to grade 3 for either of them, the sea forts did a lot better in time, only taking 4 minutes to complete compared to the 10 that the Siren Treasuries took, but the gold value is really where we see a significant difference. As a reminder, with the Siren Treasuries, we earned 31,907 gold. With the sea forts, however, I only earned 13,236 gold on this run. That's a pretty big difference and not great. What I will say though is the sea forts are a lot easier to do and they're a lot less risk compared to the Siren Treasuries and our final on-demand event, the skeleton camps. Alright, once again, new emissary, and we'll go ahead and do an Athena skeleton camp raid. So now we head to the newest thing that was added to this list with the skeleton camps. Now, obviously skeleton camps being the newer thing, a lot of you might not be as familiar with it, so I'll leave a video linked here that covers everything you need to know about it. But essentially, the skeleton camps work as with the first part being a puzzle, and then the final part being just fighting skeletons. So it's pretty simple. When I've done it in the past, it's been pretty fast, but for this test, we'll be able to have a firm number to be able to compare it to the other on-demand events. So something to keep in mind with the skeleton camps, and I talk about it in that video. With the skeleton camps, if you do the raid voyage, you're going to get vastly different rewards compared to just doing it emergently. The reason for this is when you do it emergently, the only reward you get is the Orb of Secrets. That is partly why I decided to do this experiment as raid voyages only, just so that it's a little bit more fair to see how it could actually work to the best benefit of everything. It's not really going to get you good emissary value just by doing the regular version of this. So if you're trying to do this to raise your reputation or whatever, you're probably going to want to do the raid voyage. Now to be honest, I did kind of cheat a little bit with the skeleton camps for this one. When I landed on the island, I found a trident here. So that is helping a little bit, just to kind of go a little bit faster. But this isn't that different from just normally playing. So keep in mind, use what you find at these events to your advantage. You know, we talked about the tridents at the Siren Treasuries. They're very helpful for doing that a lot faster than just using your normal weapons. And so is true here. Now you'll notice inside this vault for the skeleton camps, it's probably going to be the most sparse. Because we did an Athena version of this, there's going to be 2 collector's chests worth of stuff to take back. Whereas if you do it with the regular trading companies, there will only be 1. Now the reason for this is these treasures are supposed to be higher value than just regular treasure you'd find at the other events. And it's supposed to be so that you only have to take 1 trip. We're going to find that out with this test, but I'll let y'all know the results of that once we get back to the outpost. So, see you all there. So now we're here with our final cash-in for this experiment. We only have 2 chests to sell, so this is going to be the fastest to actually finish selling, if that matters to you. Personally, I don't really count that as a significant factor with, the harpoon and everything for the sovereign tent. Everything sells pretty fast already. But if you're interested in that, you can keep that in mind. I think with the other two events that we talked about, they have about a similar amount of treasure to collect, whereas this one is just these 2 chests that I need to take up. So if selling speed is something that you find important, you'll probably want to keep that in mind. Alright, now with our experiment finally complete, we can go ahead and talk about the results and just my general thoughts between these 3 different events. So most of these results ended up being kind of on par with what my expectations were for these events. However, I think the gold value between these is very interesting and significant. So let's do a recap and announce what we had the results for the skeleton camps as, starting with the time to complete for all 3 of these different events. The worst of these was the Siren Treasuries, taking 10 minutes to do. That is not too bad. I think that is pretty reasonable, even though it's the longest one on this list. So the other 2 are actually really short to do. In our second place, we have the skeleton camps at 6 minutes. So that's a pretty middle of the road one. Not too long to take. Took about 3 minutes to do the puzzle, 3 minutes to do the final battle, and obviously just kind of navigating the whole place and stuff. So it wasn't too bad. And then Sea Forts is at our number 1 spot for time, with only taking 4 minutes. That was a lot quicker than I expected. I didn't realize that I did Sea Forts that quickly, so that was pretty interesting to find out as well. Something to keep in mind about all 3 of these, I've done a significant amount of all 3 of these events, especially in the skeleton camps, since they've been released with this recent season. So I have kind of learned how to go through these quicker. Your results may differ a little bit if you're doing this for the first time or you're not too experienced with them. It maybe take a little bit longer for you to complete, but this should hopefully help guide you a little bit in terms of which one to choose to do. Next, I want to look at emissary grade. So the emissary grade one was interesting. All of these kind of disappointed me a little bit. And our worst spot was skeleton camps, which I was a little bit surprised. The emissary grade for that only came out to be 2.33, so very low, not really getting you much. Next we have the Sea Forts, which got 2.8, which is pretty reasonable, I think, in terms of how much time it takes to do and how much you're getting. And then the one that was most disappointing to me was the Siren Treasuries, which gets you to 2.9. It basically needs 1 more treasure to get you to grade 3, which was very frustrating to see. I think it would have been a little bit better to have 1 more treasure in there, or something that was a little bit higher value that would have just bumped you up just slightly more. Keep in mind, when you're actually playing this and not doing it as an experiment like I was doing, you can always do one of these events like the Siren Treasury or Sea Fort, and then go grab a piece of treasure somewhere else, or even just look on the islands. A lot of islands have treasure just kind of sitting on the shore that would probably get you to grade 3 anyways, depending on the trading company that you're an emissary for. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at our gold values, because I think this is probably the most important to a lot of players that are trying to figure out how to earn the most gold quickly. And our third spot is Sea Forts, which I found disappointing but not as surprising, because we kind of knew that Sea Forts were the quickest to do, so it kind of makes sense that they'd be the lowest on here. With the Sea Forts, I made 13,236 gold from selling the treasure there. Keep in mind that also includes the stuff that's in the additional vault that's at the top of the Sea Fort. So you're going to have to unlock both the main vault and the extra bonus vault at the top of the Sea Fort if you want to have similar results to mine. In our second place, we have skeleton camps with 14,401 gold. Honestly, I think this should have been a little bit higher. I would have been more happy with, say, 16,000 gold. I think only 14,000 is a little bit disappointing. But keep in mind, one of the things that the developers have said is that they put gold piles down there that are supposed to be a little bit more valuable than the gold piles found in the Siren Treasury and Sea Forts. So potentially, if we were to factor in the gold piles, that would have made a difference. In my personal experience, I haven't really noticed too much of a difference when getting the gold piles at skeleton camps compared to at other places. But earning 14,000 in 6 minutes isn't that bad, in my opinion. Finally, at our number 1 spot for gold value, we have Siren Treasuries with 31,907. It just completely blows the rest out of the water. And that's a bit disappointing because it's only 4 more minutes compared to skeleton camps, but it earns more than double of the skeleton camps. I think the results of this are pretty interesting. I think this hopefully helps you kind of choose between these different on-demand events, especially if you're crunched for time and you're trying to figure out what would make the best amount of money with the time that you have. In general, my thoughts are I love all three of these. I think, like I said before, sea forts are the safest to do. It's probably the thing I would recommend the most just because it gets you pretty good emissary grade, might have the least amount of gold, but it's not too far different from the skeleton camps, and it's the fastest to do. My recommendation when doing the sea forts, I would stand at the very top of the sea fort to fight the phantoms, and then you'll be able to see any ships that are coming around you. Both the Siren Treasuries and the sea forts are a little bit similar in terms of just being solely focused on PvE combat, whereas the skeleton camps are a really nice refresher if you want something that's a little bit different. I think fighting the obsidian skeletons in there are pretty easy, and the puzzle aspect of it is a lot of fun. And because it's not as long as the Siren Treasury, you shouldn't feel as much risk doing the skeleton camps as compared to the Siren Treasuries. But that's our comparison and my thoughts on these different on-demand events. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments below, and which one of these is your favorite. That's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed, it'd be great if you like and subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye y'all.